going on? Today we're talking New York State Workers' Comp, and is Nysif, aka the New York State Insurance Fund, your only option? Stay tuned, let's find out. So the bad news first. In the state of New York, the New York State Insurance Fund is the largest work comp carrier. That's not to say there aren't other options, but they're kind of few and far between, especially if you're in a construction trade. When it comes to construction, New York State Insurance Fund is almost the only option. In some cases, if you're kind of more of a low-risk contractor, aka plumber, electrician, basically if your feet don't leave the ground, or if they do, it's very minimal, there might be some other options, but you basically have to have 3 years prior and no losses to get somebody else to consider you. And then you've got the options of, your travelers, your AmTrust, your Guard, etc. But if you're a new venture, get ready to do business with the New York State Insurance Fund. Now, that is not the end of the world. Now granted, they do send out bills that take a PhD in mathematics to understand, but you can get through it. We have tons and tons of clients that are insured with New York State Insurance Fund and really rarely have a problem. When you run into issues is when you're trying to operate in the gray area. If you're operating in the gray area, be prepared. At some point, the New York State Insurance Fund is going to catch whatever it is that you're trying to pull over on them. They have some really skilled auditors, and those auditors are gonna figure it out. So you might as well just play by the rules. So since you're probably gonna have to deal with them, let's kind of get to know them. Who is Nysif? Nysif was founded by New York State in 1914 to provide low-cost workers' comp options to all businesses. Basically, they're the market of last resort. If nobody else is willing to insure you, Nysif is there. That being said, with their mission to be the low-cost provider, their rates are actually pretty good. And that's the reason we don't see a lot of competition. And in fact, if you do get insurance outside of the state insurance fund, a lot of times it's slightly more expensive. Unlike your typical private carrier who has to make a profit, the New York State Insurance Fund's entire goal is to just break even. So that gives them a competitive advantage. That's how they got to be the largest work comp provider in the state. Another reason they've become the largest provider is they have to offer coverage. If you have really bad loss history or maybe even open losses, they're going to be the place for you. Something to keep in mind, Nysif is not one to kind of forgive and forget. We see it all the time where someone has a business entity or something like that from 20 plus years ago dragged up and they owe $3,000 or sometimes worse. I mean, we had it once where they owed like $25,000 for some prior company from a decade ago. And there's really no getting around that. They're not just gonna be like, oh, that was 10 years ago, no big deal. It's not gonna happen. They're gonna make you pay it. So if you are fortunate enough to get out of the New York State Insurance Fund, don't pass on doing that last audit. You absolutely need to get that closed out properly. At the end of the day, New York State Insurance Fund is really a necessity with no other private carriers here, but they are not the most fun to do business with. So just keep that in mind as you consider them for your work comp options. If you're having problems with the New York State Insurance Fund, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat. We deal with them all the time and can oftentimes help resolve problems. Take it easy.